We are now under a week away from the ServPro First Responder Bowl between the Louisville Cardinals and the Air Force Falcons. Just how good are the Falcons? Well, we're going to answer that and more on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode is brought to you by Netsuite. Netsuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth. Head to netsuite.com/lockedonncaa for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. Also want to take this time to thank you personally for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. Haven't necessarily gone too much in depth into the ServPro First Responder Bowl between the Louisville Cardinals and the Air Force Falcons, but we'll start to do that with today's episode, beginning by answering the question, just how good is Air Force and how good have they been this year? I'm going to explain why that's tough to gauge, and then we all watched that game against Kentucky in the season conclusion in the regular season. And it brought forth a lot of concerns. I'm going to tell you 3 things that I'm looking for personally for the Louisville Cardinals to do in this matchup against Air Force. And then finally, in the last segment, we'll switch tunes, head over to men's basketball, where top 2023 commit hometown hero male basketball star Kaleb Glenn and his team squared off in the King of the Bluegrass over the past X amount of days. We'll talk about how he fared in that tournament coming up later on in the show. Before we get into the content of the show today, like I mentioned, for those who are not aware of who I am, my name is Dalton Pence. I'm a credentialed media member for Cardinal Sports Zone, where I serve as both a football beat writer and a recruiting analyst. Also do some PA announcing work for various sports in the university. You can follow my personal Twitter in the graphic in the bottom left hand of your screen, and you can also follow the podcast Twitter page at LO_Louisville. So let's get right on into the show. And I got to be honest, we're talking about how good Air Force is. And, if you've listened to the show or followed along over the past however many weeks, at the end of the football season, when I talk about how good a team is, a lot of times I'll come to a crossroads to where I'm just not so sure. Now, as the ACC slate got deeper into the schedule, it was easier to kind of gauge how good teams are. But early on, it was a little challenging because there wasn't a lot of continuity in terms of opposition, and there were some conflicting things in terms of analysis. But just kind of breaking it down for the Air Force Falcons, for those who are not aware, they are 9-3 on the season in the Mountain West Conference. They finished 6-2. Troy Calhoun once again at the helm for the Air Force Falcons. Very solid this season. They had 3 losses, and all 3 were under 7 points. They lost to Utah State earlier in the season, 49-45. 2 losses back-to-back to the then-ranked South Dakota State Aztecs, 20-14, and then lost a rivalry game to Army, 21-14. So throughout the season, beaten a lot of opposition, but the challenging aspect of gauging how good they are is the fact that their strength of schedule not necessarily the greatest, just 84th out of 130 FBS teams that have been graded. And like I mentioned, to break down Air Force, you have to really look into what they do on both sides of the ball. And for those who aren't aware, like most of the academy teams, they do run a very unique triple option type offense to where it's very deceptive in running the ball. And in fact, Air Force currently has the #1 rated rushing attack in the NCAA this season. They average 340.8 rushing yards per game, led by junior running back Brad Roberts, who has 1,275 on the season, which is 14th in the nation. So that offense, as you would expect, it's not an offense that throws the ball a lot. I think they have less than 1,000 yards in terms of passing yards. But they run the ball extremely well. They utilize that triple options triple option offense. I can't even speak today. The triple option offense to a T. They use it to their advantage with the deceptive aspects of it. So it's one of those things where it's kind of hard to gauge because I think that it's kind of hard to grasp how good the triple option offense is because some teams do better defending it than others. However, you can also make the argument that teams haven't done that great against it, considering the fact that they are having the best rushing season of any team in college football this year. Points wise, they are scoring it at 31 points per game, which is good for just under 50th in the country. On the defensive side of things, this is where things get a little tricky when you gauge how good Air Force is, because defensively they are extremely stout. They are the 13th scoring defense in the country, allowing under 20 points per game to their opposition. 20th in passing defense, allowing under 200 yards per contest to their opponents. They're 29th in the turnover margin. But the interesting statistic here is the fact that they are allowing 94.7 rushing yards per game, which is good for 7th in the country. So yes, you could talk about how deceptive that triple option offense may be, but the reality of the fact is they also are extremely solid defensively. So they're a good team, and it's something that you can't overlook. The fact that they play in the Mountain West Conference, you can't overlook that their strength of schedule is in the it's in the bottom half of the FBS. However, when you look against the teams that they played, they haven't necessarily gotten beaten, all that much. Only 3 losses, I think, are combined by less than 20 points or so. So even when they do lose, it's very close. Scoring wise, if you're a high scoring offense playing against Air Force, something's got to budge. And I think we'll talk about that here in the next segment when we discuss what I want to see from Louisville personally. It's interesting to really break it down because you always run the risk of when you play a one-dimensional offense, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, you're going to, make that aspect of the game or make the other aspect of the game obsolete. So meaning, for who was it? Virginia, when, Brandon Armstrong had 400 yards passing, but the rushing attack, they didn't necessarily have any type of rushing game. You can make one aspect of the game obsolete, and Virginia showed that either that works to your advantage to where, you just completely throw a wrench in the other team's game plan, or that aspect of the game is just so potent and so deadly that it doesn't necessarily matter what the other aspect of the game is. You have to have a certain amount of discipline, and discipline is definitely the name of the game when you are focusing on guarding a triple option offense, and it makes it that much more difficult that opponents of Air Force this season haven't necessarily had much leeway because that defense is allowing under 20 points per game. So it makes it critical that you truly hold Air Force and, contain what they're able to do in the rushing attack. And like I mentioned, we will continue to dissect Air Force personnel, how they match up positionally to the Louisville Cardinals, what the keys to the game are. We'll have all of that coverage, leading up to the game on the 28th. So there are a couple things that I want to see from the Louisville Cardinals in this game. There are 3 things that are on the top of that priority list. We'll talk about that here in just a second after we talk about our friends down at Prize Picks. Obviously, if you're listening to this episode, you understand that bowl season is here, Cardinal fans. I've been telling you about Prize Picks, and if you still haven't signed up, I got to be honest and ask, what are you waiting for? In addition to the college football action, Prize Picks makes college basketball more exciting. It's daily fantasy made easy, offering more college football and basketball props than anyone in the world, and offering any prop you can think of. So in basketball, you can play points, rebounds, assists, threes made, and more. All of those that deposit and use the promo code LOCKEDON will receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So here's how it works. You basically pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. But here's the great thing about Prize Picks. It allows mixed sports entries. So you could take the over on Joel Embiid and combine that with the under on Aaron Rodgers in the same entry. Use the award-winning app on both the App Store and Google Play. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's safe. It offers fast withdrawals, so don't hesitate. Check out PrizePicks.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I also want to take this time to talk to you about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, Netsuite. So imagine this scenario. This is it. The putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. And you can kind of draw some parallels on sometimes how you run your business. Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software. So to see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. It's the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth, and it's everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying well ahead of the competition. Over 28,000 businesses already use NetSuite for the new year. NetSuite is offering a new financing program for those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/locked. Head to netsuite.com/locked for this special one-of-a-kind financing offer on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. Once again, that is netsuite.com/locked. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to check out the Ultimate College Football Playoff Preview 2021, the local experts' betting advice and draft analysis. The most comprehensive college football playoff preview begun, that's not even a word, Dalton, begun last Friday. So be sure to check that out. So, as I mentioned, there are a couple things that I want to see from the Louisville Cardinals in this matchup with the Air Force Falcons. Just currently briefly stating them, and then we'll dive into each individual one. Number one, that is containing and doing a better job than you did in 2018 of containing the triple option offense. Number two is winning the line of scrimmage. Number three is with the amount of injuries and guys not playing in the ball game via transfer and stuff like that. I want to see some of the younger guys step up. So let's dive right on into the first one, and that is handling the triple option offense and containing that. I mean, obviously, Dalton, it is very evident. You said it yourself. This is a triple option offense that runs the ball better than any team in the country. Of course, you would want to contain, the option offense and make it obsolete, which is easier said than done. No team in college football has really been able to do that so much this season outside of maybe San Diego State and Army. And to that, I say you're right. You're definitely right. I'm not disagreeing or saying that is wrong. But when you look at Louisville from a context perspective, I want to see the Cards make some better strides defensively. Obviously, this season, all season long, the issue's kind of been containing other offenses. They've done pretty solid with the rushing defense, and I've been pretty impressed with what they've been able to do against some top guys, Mateo Durant, Sean Tucker from Duke and Syracuse respectively. So it's one of those things to where when you look at what the Cards did against Syracuse, that had sort of not necessarily a great passing game, but they had a great rushing attack. Louisville really forced the issue there and made it tough for the Orange to assert themselves on the offensive side of things on the ground. But this is a different animal. You're talking about a rushing attack that comes in a lot of different ways. Option offense, there's a lot of deceptiveness. There's a lot of reads at the line of scrimmage, read pass options without the pass option. So the name of the game, like I said, is discipline. I want to see some of these younger guys stay disciplined, really complete tackles and get plays blown up at the line of scrimmage. And that kind of brings me to my second point, is winning the line of scrimmage. Defensively, I think it speaks for itself. When you're able to get guys in the opposing backfield and making the quarterback make decisions quicker, especially in a context of trying to defend a triple option offense, it makes it that much more valuable when you have guys that can get through the line of scrimmage, like Yasir Abdullah, like Ashton Gelati, like Yaya Diaby, etc. Getting them into the backfield, forcing Air Force to really struggle in making their decisions. When you look at what the quarterback for Air Force has been able to do, I'm going to be pronouncing this wrong, Hasek Daniels, only 932 passing yards, but they do have he does have 705 rushing yards. They have 4 guys that have rushed for over 400 yards this season. So, like I mentioned, it comes from in a lot of ways. So you have to be able to identify that at the line of scrimmage and make Daniels really make decisions that much quicker. And on the offensive side, I mean, I mentioned it is a very, very solid Air Force defense. They're top 20 in almost every single category. It's going to be a matter of, setting the tone up front. The Louisville offensive line, veteran led, going out on a bang, getting to really force the issue up front, giving the running back some room to run through, and then having some, operation time from Malik Cunningham in the pocket, allowing him to either make decisions with his legs or in the air. So it's really, it all feeds into each other because winning the line of scrimmage helps defensively, obviously, and then winning the line of scrimmage on offense helps some of these guys at the wide receiver core that might get more opportunities with Justin Marshall and Jordan Watkins transferring out of the program. So there's a lot of guys still there in the wide receiving core that have made plays. Amari Huggins-Bruce, Tyler Harrell, Marshawn Ford is a receiver to me, etc., that you can go to for big plays. So I look for guys to step up, and that spans beyond the wide receiving core. You have the defensive positions. There's a lot of injury to the linebacking core and the cornerback room, and that's going to be something to look forward to see some of these younger guys and see how they do, especially the linebacking core in a game against Air Force, to where it's critical that they are able to read the quarterback, jump the gaps, and complete the tackles, because Air Force has a unique style of football that you would think if you can make them one-dimensional that it would cause other teams to make them obsolete and really succeed against them. That's just not been the case. And I think it's all about, the art of deception. So you have to stay disciplined and you have to ball out when you get the opportunity. So I think at the end of the day, it's all about containing and staying disciplined on defense and really making that Air Force offense and the triple option offense work. It is winning the line of scrimmage. It's getting into the opposing backfield and making Daniels, forcing Daniels to make quicker decisions and possibly slip up and make a mistake or go with the wrong read. And on offense, it's about setting the tone for the rushing attack that has been pretty successful all season long and giving time for Malik Cunningham to dissect the Air Force passing defense. And finally, with the transfers of a handful of guys, with the injuries that have accumulated over the season, I look for players that, the younger players that haven't necessarily got a lot of time in years past to really step up and, assert themselves and leave their mark on this game and have some good momentum heading in to the next season. So, and like I mentioned, we will continue to talk about this matchup as the game gets closer on the 28th. So I want to take this time now to switch gears a little bit, look into the Louisville men's basketball side of things in the recruiting realm. 2023 commit and Louisville Male High School standout Kaleb Glenn and the Bulldogs took on the king of the Bluegrass this week and came out with a third place finish. We'll talk about how he fared in the handful of games in the Christmas tournament at Fairdale High School over the past couple of days. Right after we talk about our friends at BetOnline. BetOnline has had you covered this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the college bowl season and the pro football playoffs. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all of the sports action. Head to the website or use your mobile device today to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive it. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 campaign. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports, and it's where the game starts. Also, before we get into the last segment, I want to talk to you about our friends at Built Bar. The holiday season has been going smoothly. I still can't believe it's December 22nd, but do yourself a favor before it's too late. Grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, or even better than a candy bar. Built Bar is filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor and covered in real chocolate. but amazingly low in sugar, calories, net carbs, fat, etc., and high in protein. So you get the best of both worlds, delicious and healthy. There's so many different flavors, and it gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down those mall doors and battle the holiday shoppers. Because it's the season of peace and love, don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at parties because people are so passionate about their favorite flavor. Tell Santa to throw in a few Built Bar flavors in those stockings. Dip your Built Bar into a piping hot cup of hot cocoa. And like some of those marshmallow treats around the holidays, you need to get your hand on Built Bar Puffs. So do yourself a favor. There is a wide variety that Built Bar can fulfill. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Once again, that is the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. So, final segment of the Wednesday edition of the show. I'm forgetting my days. It really just doesn't feel like December 22nd. It's crazy to me that Christmas Eve is 2 days away. But regardless, with it being, the holiday season, the King of the Bluegrass, the annual tournament at Fairdale High School that brings in crowds, that pack the stands at the high school, featuring the top teams in the state and out of state. The Male Bulldogs squared off in the tournament like they do every year and finished in third place by defeating the Dorman Cavaliers on Tuesday evening. And Kaleb Glenn and the Bulldogs started out solid against the Belfry Pirates, topped the 100-point mark, beat Belfry by almost 20 points. Kaleb had about 25 points. Then they turned to Ashland Blazer, where it took some late-game heroics and a couple mishaps on Ashland Blazer's end to come out on top. Kaleb Glenn also in that 20 to 25 point range. He could have been 30 points. I'm not exactly sure how many scored there. Then they ran into Covington Catholic, who ended up winning the tournament. Covington Catholic is very, very solid. There's multiple college prospects on that team. The team struggled, Kaleb included. He led the Bulldogs with 12 points and 7 rebounds, just not able to get a lot going offensively. In Covcath, like Tim Hayworth, will tell you, is a very, very solid team, and the two teams will square off again on January 22nd at Male. So if you have nothing to do, be sure to check out that game between two top 5 teams. And then in the third place game, the Bulldogs bounced back with a solid victory over Dorman Cavaliers from Spartanburg, South Carolina. Very solid program there with Alabama commit Noah Clowney and company. So overall, I thought that, for a team like Male that kind of struggled in the early parts of the season, just kind of looked discombobulated on both ends of the court, they put together a pretty solid resume, and they lost to a team that ended up winning the tournament. They're very solid. Covington Catholic is probably, outside of Ballard, maybe the second favorite to win it all in March. So I thought that Kaleb looked pretty solid. Overall, what this week taught me is that, pound for pound, it's very hard to check him in the paint. You have to pretty much double team him and swarm him when he gets the ball in the paint, because when he does, he's very, very strong and finishes well around the rim. One thing that he's beginning to do a lot this year that I think, takes his post offense to a new level is he's really utilizing the spin move, back to the basket, and he just does kind of the 180 spin that allows him to either go with the offhand or slide down into a drop step dunk. He's still kind of a work in progress on the perimeter, and that's to be expected. At playing as a big, he's transitioning into a wing, so it's going to take some time for his 6'7" frame. I think he showed spurts in the tournament to where the perimeter shot looks good. I mean, the form is not mechanical by any stretch. It's not there's no hitch. It's pretty fluid for his size, and it's just a matter of knocking down the shots. He knocked down a couple against Dorman and really, really showed out against Alabama commit Noah Clowney, who is top. I think he's 62nd in the country in the class of 2022, and he looked unstoppable. I mean, he had nearly 30 points. He may have actually had 30 points. I'm not exactly sure. I announced all but one of their games in the King of the Bluegrass. The only game I didn't announce was against Belfry. I announced against a couple teams in the tournament. From what I saw, Kaleb was probably one of the top 5 most impressive individual performances from a whole collective body of work from the tournament, of any player in there. So I was very impressed with what I saw. understand, and I think Louisville fans need to understand that his perimeter game, his ball handling, his ability to create his own shot, in the mid-range, it's all coming together. He's better than he was a year ago, which is better than he was the year before that as a freshman. So he is still, getting better. His best days are ahead of him. He does already have a college-ready body. I mean, if you look at him, he's pretty jacked. So that's a good thing that, it's not necessarily a matter of getting in the weight room because he has that strength. He's one of the strongest players on the court at all time. So he played very solid. I was impressed by how good he is on the boards, which is not really a shock to me because I see it every home game. But you get the sense that he could come into Louisville right away and be sufficient on the boards. He has a high vertical, very tenacious rebounder, crashes the boards on both ends. I like what he's doing, in terms of defense around the rim now. I think he's getting a better grasp of how to play pick and rolls and being a screen big and trying to hedge the opposing ball handler up top to where it makes it really tough for them to make decisions on the fly and pass it down to the big that is trying to slip and roll near the basket. So overall, I mean, we saw what we saw, and it was what we expected from Kaleb Glenn. I mean, he was putting up some big numbers. One-on-one, it's almost impossible to stay in front of him. He's very, very strong, and his footwork is getting better. He's getting better ball handling wise, better in transition, and he's going to continue to get better. So those that maybe watched the Covington Catholic game or saw some other instances in some other games where you're like, he's a Louisville guy, of course he is. He's shown over the past 3 years why he is a top 40 player in the country. I mean, there should be no surprise as to why that is. But you can also accept the fact that he is still growing in his game, and his best days of basketball are well in his future. He's going to continue to get better, but he's a kid that loves to work, and that's something that you can be very, very encouraged by. So overall, I'm impressed by what he did this past week against some of the best teams, not only in the state, but Dorman is one of the best teams in South Carolina, and he looked flat out dominant, especially around the rim, against a high D1 level commit. So we will continue to monitor his progress as the season goes on. But overall, started to talk about Air Force and how good they were and why it's kind of hard to gauge just how good that is, and explained what the 3 things are that I'm looking forward to seeing from Louisville football in the bowl game. And finally, like we've said, we've talked about Kaleb Glenn and how he fared in the King of the Bluegrass with the Male Bulldogs. Tomorrow, it'll be back to previewing Air Force, looking at the players to watch and so on and so forth. Before we get out of here, I want to give a couple quick shout-outs to the Cardinals Sports Zone podcast. You can check out the most recent episode at cardinalsportszone.com. Also, Cardinal Sports Zone co-founder Jeremy Wallman is usually on for Wednesdays. I told him to let's wait till next week due to some scheduling issues. Also, if you would send out some thoughts to his dad fighting some health issues that he's had for a while, but he's continually fighting. And we keeping him in my thoughts and prayers. I ask that you do the same. One of the best guys you'll ever meet in Jeremy, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree there. Also want to give a quick shout out to the Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q with handicapping expert analysis from Lee Sterling. You can get that on the Odyssey app or wherever you like to get your podcast. But as far as the episode goes, that is going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.